"Why does he look so different?" my father sneered, his gaze sharp and cruel as it rested on my child. His words cut through the hum of the party, sharp as broken glass. I smiled, perfectly still, letting the silence stretch like a held breath. "My name is Madeline Hart, I'm 37. How do you stay composed when someone you once loved tries to erase your bloodline with laughter?" The champagne glasses clinked somewhere behind me, but their sound was distant, muffled by the shock in the room. I felt the warmth of my child's small hand in mine, soft and trusting, a pulse against my own anxiety. My father leaned closer, smirking, certain that his superiority would intimidate me into submission. I reached slowly for the envelope tucked in my clutch, feeling the smooth paper under my fingers. "Here, Dad," I said, voice calm, almost casual. His laughter faltered for a split second and I noticed it. The tiniest hesitation, the imperceptible tightening around his eyes. As he tore the envelope open, I let my gaze drift over the mirrored wall behind him. His reflection, pale and disbelieving, seemed to split him in two, the father he thought he was and the man everyone else would finally see. I realized then quietly that power isn't given, it's taken, and sometimes with a smile. His hands trembled slightly as he lifted the paper, eyes scanning the contents. The room had gone still, all eyes pivoting toward him, the laughter and music frozen mid-air. I could hear my own heartbeat, steady, controlled, a quiet drum beneath the chaos he had tried to orchestrate. The envelope contained more than numbers. It contained evidence. Years of carefully hidden transactions, lies buried in legalese, a meticulous record of the money he had siphoned from the family trust. My father's smirk vanished, replaced by a mask of disbelief and fear that no amount of charm could cover. I felt the child's hand squeeze mine, grounding me. I studied my father in the mirror again. The reflection amplified his shock, doubling the humiliation, stretching it for all to see. Somewhere behind me someone whispered, "Is this real?" And I let the silence answer. No one moved to intervene. The very people who had once ignored his cruelty now watched as he confronted it, raw and exposed. And in that moment, a strange calm settled over me. I realized that revenge wasn't about yelling or confrontation. It was about precision, timing, and patience. He looked at me then, finally, eyes wide, searching for any hint of the daughter he thought he knew. I only smiled. He swallowed hard, as if trying to force back the shock curling in his throat. "Madeline." His voice faltered, brittle and unfamiliar. The room hung on every syllable, waiting, watching. I kept my smile, calm, almost serene, while inside, a quiet storm settled in my chest. I noticed the subtle shift in the air, the sudden stiffness, the muted whispers, the faint clatter of a fork dropped on a plate somewhere behind me. The mirror caught every reaction. The way his shoulders slumped slightly, how his eyes darted to the floor, searching for an escape that didn't exist. My child tugged gently at my sleeve, eyes wide, innocent. I lowered myself to kneel, brushing a strand of hair from their face. The contrast was sharp. Their warmth, their trust, against his cold, entitled sneer now shattered. I reached for the wine glass beside me, lifting it slowly. The sound of the liquid swishing was louder than the music, more deliberate than any gesture of confrontation. I let him stew in the silence, the tension thick and suffocating, letting the public realization take root. For the first time in years he wasn't in control. And I felt it, a small, quiet pulse of satisfaction, like the faintest echo of justice, mirrored in his own horrified reflection. He tried to laugh, a hollow, brittle sound, but it didn't reach his eyes. Every guest's gaze felt like a spotlight, sharpening the edges of his shame. I remained seated, calm, tracing the rim of my wine glass with a fingertip, letting the tension stretch between us like a taut wire. I could hear the faint click of heels behind me, the maid pretending not to notice, but I let it pass, letting the atmosphere thicken. The room smelled faintly of roses from the centerpiece, incongruously sweet against the bitterness in the air. Every detail became part of the stage, every gesture a silent mark of my patience and precision. My father's hand shook as he refolded the documents, pale against the envelope he had torn. He searched for an explanation, any excuse, but the evidence didn't bend for him. I thought of every insult, every dismissive word, every public moment where he had belittled my family. Each memory folded neatly into the quiet satisfaction building behind my ribs. I caught my reflection again in the mirror. This time I saw something else. Him fractured and me composed, untouchable. A surreal detail struck me. The chandelier above looked like it was holding its breath too, droplets of crystal frozen mid-sway. And in that suspended moment, I knew the night would belong entirely to me. He tried to speak again, but his words stumbled over themselves, clumsy and desperate. "It's a mistake," he muttered, voice cracking. No one believed him. No one needed to. The silence was louder than any defense he could muster. I stood slowly, letting the folds of my pink dress whisper against the floor, every movement measured, deliberate. My child pressed close to me, their small hand in mine grounding me in the moment, a reminder of why I had endured his cruelty for so long. The envelope rested in my palm, now empty except for the mark it had left, his expression frozen, stripped bare. I felt a thrill of calm clarity, the kind that only comes when a long-held plan reaches its apex. He had underestimated me, just as he had underestimated my patience, my composure, my ability to turn his arrogance into spectacle. I stepped toward the mirror again, eyes tracing his reflection. The chandelier glittered, droplets catching the light like tiny stars, suspended mid-air. For a moment, the surreal beauty of the room softened the sharp edges of revenge. And then he looked at me, not as a daughter, not as an adversary, but as someone who had quietly outmaneuvered him in plain sight. He sank into the chair, defeated, as if the weight of the room pressed him down. The laughter had long faded. All that remained was the quiet hum of whispered astonishment. I let the silence stretch, tasting it, letting it settle like dust over the space he had once dominated. My child's eyes followed mine, curious but trusting. I brushed a loose strand of hair from their face, feeling the soft warmth against my fingertips, a subtle reminder that my focus was no longer on anger but on clarity. Each heartbeat was measured, deliberate, echoing the rhythm of patience I had honed over years of quiet endurance. I circled the room slowly, letting my presence mark every corner. The chandelier above caught the light in fractured shards, the reflections dancing across the walls like small, accusing fingers. He noticed them too, I could see it. The mirror once again doubling his humiliation, this time layered with a surreal, almost hypnotic beauty. "You taught me control," I whispered under my breath, "but I've taught myself freedom." He looked up at me, searching for any crack in my calm, any sign of mercy. There was none. Only the quiet realization that the daughter he had dismissed had become the orchestrator of his reckoning. I walked toward the table where the remaining guests lingered, their eyes flicking between him and me. Their curiosity was palpable, their judgment quiet but unmistakable. I let my fingers brush the envelope still lying there, a symbol of what had shifted tonight. Every detail mattered. The polished surface, the faint crease where he had opened it, the subtle weight of justice in my hand. He tried to meet my gaze, but it was futile. The man who had sneered, dismissed, and humiliated now sat exposed, stripped of the armor he had worn for decades. The mirror above the mantel reflected him back to himself, multiplied, fractured, each reflection a silent indictment of his arrogance. I crouched to my child's level, whispering softly, "See? Sometimes the quietest hands carry the heaviest truth." Their eyes shone not with fear but with wonder. The chandelier trembled slightly above, almost imperceptibly, like the room itself was aware of the shift. I traced its crystals with my mind, imagining them holding the memory of tonight, frozen in light. And in that suspended heartbeat, I realized the power wasn't in the envelope or the crowd or even the mirror. It was in the calm, unshakable knowledge that I had finally, irrevocably, claimed my dignity, and he could do nothing to take it back. He remained seated, pale, hands loosely gripping the chair as if holding on to the last shreds of control. The room slowly exhaled, the tension dissolving into murmurs and soft clinking of glasses. I stood tall, letting the calm settle over me like a second skin. My child tugged gently at my dress. I knelt, brushing their hair back, feeling the warmth and trust that no insult, no sneer, no moment of cruelty could ever take away. The envelope lay empty now, a simple piece of paper that had shifted the balance of power with quiet precision. I glanced at the mirror one last time. His reflection stared back, fractured, multiplied, frozen in a tableau of humiliation, but I saw something else too. The liberation of a daughter who refused to bow, the subtle weight of justice delivered without a scream, without vengeance that could poison the soul. I stepped back, letting the chandelier's crystals scatter the light across the room, turning the moment into art. The surreal shimmer of suspended droplets caught his gaze and mine, a silent testament to what had changed. You would remember tonight, yes, but I would remember only this: calm dignity and the quiet power of taking what was mine all along.